one of my favorite people, Miss, I don't know, Shanisha,
Sheneshia.
Shanisha Fitz, who is an attorney in family law. You hear what I say? Attorney in family law. And so this evening, she's going to bring some information to you, answer some questions that I've shared with her that grandparents have been asking, as well as probably kinship. You may know the terminology sometimes as grand families. Well, that also means grandparents, aunts, and uncles, grand families who've taken into relatives. Shanisha, I know I messed it up, but welcome to Bags of Goodies. I
Thank you
am
so much.
going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you reintroduce yourself and share with everybody whatever you like to share and just start to talk about some of the things you and I were talking about before we start recording.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first off, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Sheneshia Fitz. I have been practicing now for 12 years. And a part of my practice is family law. In the past 12 years, for 4 of those, I have represented the Department of Social Services. And so I think
Mm,
that's going to help as well with our conversation this evening. I know one of the things that is near and dear to your heart, which is the mission, which is again, helping grandparents. But one of the biggest questions was what were the rights of grandparents? And so I wanted to start by saying, because I think some people know and some are not sure, but
correct.
there is a constitutionally protected right that parents have to parent their own children. And so that's over any and everybody. But
Hmm.
there are exceptions to that. And so when a parent acts unfit or inconsistent with that right, that is where third parties, like grandparents, can come in and file for custody. But they have to have what the court calls standing. And so that means that they are in a position to become a party to an action in court. And so
Oh,
typically you will see the grandparent who wants custody acting as the plaintiff in an action. They can also be the defendant as well, because sometimes they will do what's called, they will file a motion to intervene when parents have already filed a custody action, mom versus dad, a grandparent will intervene into that to become a party as well.
oh, okay.
Yes, yes.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know some of the grandparents, and you already touched on this, which is good, were saying they were fearful to go through DSS or go through the court system. We may talk about this early because their child or adult child, when she gets herself together, may get lose their children. But if I understand you correctly, termination just doesn't happen like that, even
It
if
does
you
not.
get assistance. Okay,
It does
okay.
not.
What
And so
would cause that then? What would be the ultimate situation, if you don't mind giving us an example, Sharon, that a parent would lose their child?
So when DSS, and that's the Department of Social Services, is involved, and they have to take custody of a child. And when I say custody, because you'll say, some people think, well, DSS has custody, but the child is living with a relative like a grandparent or an aunt or uncle. But DSS has custody through the court, which means they get to say where the child lives. In addition,
Mm,
they get to make decisions when it comes to the child's safety and welfare. Although the child may be placed, and that's going to be the terminology, placed with a relative, DSS would have custody. During that time, the parent is going to have what's called a plan that they have to work. And so they will meet with DSS. There are hearings that they have to appear and come also and report to the court. They will have an attorney, but they have to explain what they are doing according to their case plan to show that they are making steps towards being reunified with their children. And when I say it's a process, it is a process because
mm,
there are also limited resources. So if a parent needs therapy or some type of substance abuse treatment, it depends on where the parent lives in what county, on whether or not that's something that's even available, even
mm.
when it comes to housing.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I have had a parent before. One of the things that she was lacking in her case plan was housing before she could get her child back. And so, of course, the court, and when I say the court, I'm talking about the judge is not going to penalize a parent for not having a home. So even if they end up going into the home with a grandparent, the caseworker will come out to the home, take a look at the home, and also have visits. But they will get the court's approval for the parent to move into the home, especially if that is where the child is. So in order for a parent to get to the point where they lose their parental rights, they have to not be working on the case plan at all. And so
Okay.
they are making no efforts to do anything to mark off any part of their case plan. And even then, I've seen 6 months go by and there has been no progress on the case plan. But all of a sudden, the parent gets it. And so they want to start making that change. The court will still allow them to start making progress because they don't want to separate a family and terminate a parent's rights.
Yes.
And there is, again, that constitutionally protected right for a parent to parent their own child. And so they will
Yes.
do everything they can to make sure that termination of parental rights doesn't happen, but the parent has to be cooperating.
Yeah, be cooperate. So
Yeah.
that leads me to the flip side, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
When the parent doesn't cooperate and they're not getting it together, um, what would a grandparent have to do in order to show that they should have custody, or is there anything they can do?
Yeah.
If mom goes month after month, almost a year, and not recovering, not doing what the courts have put in place, and we're talking about what we call formal situations, because there's informal where you're not dealing with the courts at all,
Right.
grandmas, and we'll get to that in a moment. But
Mhm.
when the parent's not doing it, what can the grandparent do to get custody or file for custody? Will the courts just automatically say, "Do you want custody?"
So we're going to talk about two different scenarios here. So
Okay.
one, which is where we were talking about DSS involvement. And when there is DSS involvement, the grandparent is, of course, they want to show up. They want to be there and be present if they can when there are hearings concerning the child. If they can be a relative placement, what's also known as a kinship placement for
Mm-hmm.
the child while DSS has custody, they should do that as well. Because now there's a relationship with the caseworker, and also there will be a relationship formed with the court because the court is going to see that they're appearing. And they can also provide updates to the court on how the child is doing. There will be a guardian ad litem assigned to the child, but the relative placement grandparent in this instance can also appear in court. And I've seen my judges ask, okay, so do you have anything to report to the court? And they can, because they are the ones that see the child every day. And so if there is something, and that can be services sometimes for the child, they can give that update to the court and request some type of service like therapy or,
Mm.
yeah,
Yes, we're seeing a lot more children that are suffering from trauma, who are
yes,
going through. Now, guardian life, you
yes,
mentioned that.
yeah.
I know when I was a foster parent, several other children did have guardian life. What is their role? Who are they, and how do they play in this scenario?
Yes. So every county has a guardian ad litem program. And so in the DSS involvement scenario, guardian ad litems are appointed to the family. So I say that because there can be 5 children
Mm-hmm.
in one family, but there's going to be one guardian. And that
Mm.
guardian ad litem is there to speak on behalf of the children. And so they go out, they visit the children at school, they visit the children at home. They are also involved in case planning meetings when they're able to, so that they can also file a report and give that report to the court with updates and any recommendations they may have as well.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So
Yeah.
that kind of gives a neutral perspective to the situation should it comes down between the grandparent and the parent. Here we have someone that is aware of both situations and represents the children.
It's
For
not, and
the
it's not always neutral.
no,
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
okay.
Because the guardian ad litem, their role is to report to the court what is going to be best for the children. So if they see, because they will talk to the parent as well, but if they see that the parent isn't making any progress and the child is now thriving with a grandparent, they will make a recommendation, and I've seen it. They will make a recommendation to the court that the child remain with the grandparent.
Mm.
Yeah,
And do they have any weight when it comes to that?
they do. Yes, they do.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
sometimes in instances where the department doesn't agree with the guardian ad litem, of course, the parent's attorney isn't going to agree. There will be a hearing. And I have seen where the court has again sided with the guardian ad litem program based off of testimony, which included reports, visits to the school, and if the child is in therapy, conversations with the therapist, of course, visiting the child in the home so they're able to see the interactions with the child and grandparent, and they will make that report to the court based on all of that.
Okay. Okay. So one of the big questions, the elephant in the room,
Yes.
what rights do grandparents have in North Carolina? Because every state is different when it comes to, and I'm kind of going a little bit over to the second group I mentioned earlier, grandparents who've been cut out of their grandchildren's lives, grandchildren who maybe mom and dad divorced,
Yes.
and said, well, I'm not dealing with him and I'm not dealing with the mother. Some states I mentioned, we talked earlier, will say, well, it depends on how much time the grandparent was involved in the child's life, and the courts will make a decision. But what is North Carolina like when it comes to grandparents?
So if the family is what the courts call an intact family, and that doesn't always mean a mother and a father together.
Hmm.
So I will give some different scenarios in that. But if there is an intact family and there is no action pending in court, the grandparent cannot file anything because
Hmm.
remember, there's that constitutionally protected status. So, and the grandparent has to have they call it third party standing, but has to have standing in order to file something with the courts. So if the family is intact, they cannot file anything. If there is a pending action, let's say the parents are separated, never been married, or are now divorced, and there is an action pending when it comes to custody, the grandparent can file a motion to intervene so that they can get visitation. But of course, there does need to be a relationship because they will have to explain what that relationship is and why it would not be in the child's best interest for them to be cut out of that relationship with the child.
Transparency.
Yeah.
Even in that situation,
Mhm.
if mom says, I don't want the grandma in my daughter's life because the dad's around, would that keep grandma from being able?
So there needs to be a little bit more than that because
Okay.
the court's goal is to do what's in the child's best interest. So if you're saying if the mother is saying, "Hey, I don't want the grandmother to be around because dad is around," that's not enough. You would need to
Mm.
explain why and what's the impact to the child. So you would need to give example of behaviors. Let's just say because he lives in the home with her, and I'm just going to use this as an example. He gets drunk and he yells and cusses and fusses. He's tearing up things and she doesn't do anything about it. And it's happened before with the children there. So
Mm.
now you've not only shown the behavior that she's condoned, but you also put the children there too. And then if
Yes.
you can tie what the impact is to the children and explain that to the court, then maybe she can say, the judge will say no.
So it's always about the children's best interest for the children in all aspects. We know we want reunification of families. We want families to stay together, but not at the risk of the children being hurt mentally, emotionally, or physically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is good. This is good. Oh, this is good. Grandmas, I hope y'all listening. I hope y'all listening.
Mhm.
In children of different ages. I think I mentioned this earlier. I've had some grandparents say that the 12-year-old or the 16-year-old don't want to go back to mom. Even though mom has gone through her recovery program, they want to stay with them. Do kids have any rights in North Carolina at any age to say whom they want to stay with?
So the courts can talk to children that are 12 and up. They can consider their testimony. And I say testimony, and that can be informal. If it's informal, then the judge will just take the children in chambers and talk to them just to see who they want to live with and why, try to get a little more background information, like what has happened to make you feel like you need to do that. And in a DSS case, the guardian ad litem will go with them because they built a relationship with the guardian ad litem. But in a private situation where DSS is not involved, then one of the attorneys will need to ask the judge to speak to the children. If they're old enough, again, you got a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, they may be fine testifying. But younger ones, a little younger, I said 12, 13, 14, they may not. And typically when I've made a request to the court to speak to children, I have asked that it be done in chambers so that they don't have to see their parents' faces, they don't have to see their grandparents' faces, and they feel at ease and they can talk freely with the judge. And so the judge
Yes.
does not have to do what they want, but the judge can consider it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And I say that because you have to understand, again, they are children. And so, unfortunately, sometimes children will not tell the truth because they don't want to hurt a parent's feelings or they want to do what a parent has told them to do. Because I've seen that where parents have coached their children to say certain things when it's not the truth. And so, a judge has to weigh all of that.
You know what? You hit on something. Being a foster parent for 14 years, and when I went through the training, it's been years. I'm not doing that. I remember sitting in a panel of foster parents, and they would talk about even though sometimes children maybe have been physically abused, they still want to be with that parent.
Oh,
Burned, arms broken,
right.
and so that's I think is great. That's where the guardian lighting really needs to come in because you're right. A child's mind is different
Mhm.
when it comes to that bond. Not to say it's a bad bond, but to be able to make a informed decision on what's best for them is very difficult. Yes, so that does make sense.
In those situations, that is, and it's something, we strive for, but children have that. They have that unconditional love for a parent. And it doesn't matter, sometimes, unfortunately, that the impact is a negative one. It is one where they have been hurt physically and emotionally, but that is their mother or that is their father. And so they love them and they want to be with them.
Yes, that's one of the areas that bags when we talk about education, because sometimes grandparents or grandfamilies don't understand that a child has been abused. Why would they want to go back, or why would they want to go in that situation? But you're right, it's a bond that is really, really unique. That let's switch a little bit and kind of get some insight from you about informal and formal, the advantages of both situations and disadvantage, and this not written anywhere because you know, but it sounds like it really helps if you go through DSS or work with the court system versus not, or am I saying something where it could have pros and cons either way?
So I think there are going to be pros and cons either way. With DSS involvement, obviously there has been something that happened. An event has happened to where DSS even had to be involved in the first place. And if that is the case, sometimes there is a process for them to be relieved of any reunification efforts with the parent. And now they may be asking, number one, that the parent's rights be terminated and the child be placed in a position for adoption. And that can be with relatives, in this case, grandparents. Or they can say the parent is not making any progress. And so we want to be relieved of reunification efforts, but we want the grandparent to become the guardian. And so that is an option as well. So the parents' rights are not terminated, but I will say in that instance, it will be difficult for them to get guardianship away or get custody back from the court appointed guardian at that point. And then the third option where DSS is involved is, okay, at this point, we want to be relieved of reunification efforts and we want the child to be placed in the custody of a grandparent. And so that will get it out of DSS court and now into a family court file. And so
Mm.
if that's done, there are going to be goals that the parent has to accomplish before they can even come back and file a modification of custody, trying to get custody of the child back.
Hmm. Have you, and this is, have you ever run into a situation in your experience where a kinship person, even through DSS, has lost custody of the children once they got them?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because sometimes people say, well, I don't think sometimes that they should be with the family, but yet you don't know.
Right. So DSS, their first goal is for the child to be with a relative. They're going to always try to find some type of kinship placement. If they cannot, then they look to a foster home. Sometimes a child is placed with relatives, in this case, a grandparent, and it ends up not working out. And I'll say, for instance, the mother or father, they come and go into the home, especially if there's substance abuse. Now they're bringing that into the home where the child is supposed to be safe.
Yes.
And although the child is placed with a relative, DSS still has custody. So ultimately, they are responsible for the welfare of the child. And so if this home is no longer safe for the child, yep, DSS is going to get requests from the court. And sometimes they move the child without even getting permission from the courts because it is a safety risk. But then
Mm.
go ahead and let the courts know we had to move the child. And I have never seen where the court has said, oh, no, there's no safety risk and you need to put the child back. Because typically DSS doesn't just remove a child. They want them to be with family, if that's possible.
Yes, that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit now, and we're going to kind of be starting closing out somewhat. Let's talk about informal care.
Yeah.
Grandparents who are not working with DHS, who are not in the court system, who get their grandbabies and having challenges with being able to enroll them in school, being able to get medical assistance while their daughter, because sometimes, you know, I meet grandparents and they say, my daughter said, Mom, I can't keep the kids right now. Can you keep them for a couple of months while I get myself together? You know, where they voluntarily do it. In some states, I know that a parent can sign an affidavit and have it notarized that this is in their parent grandparent to allow them. In some states, there's like has to be where they brought it to court or an attorney to get it done, but they both can sign. Do grandparents who are informal have anything they can do, or they have to go through DSS in order to do those things, or courts such as the school system? medical care. Can you speak on that just honestly?
Absolutely. So sometimes I have seen where, typically it's mom who may have custody of the children, but she's going through a period where she can't do it on her own, or she just can't do it, period. And the grandparents step in. And I have seen documents, and they are called it's a guardianship document. And I guess they find a template online where mom is giving custody. They put custody in there, or guardianship, to a grandparent for the child, and they will include language that this includes making decisions when it comes to educational purposes and also when it comes to medical purposes. And then the parent will sign it and have her signature notarized. It is not a court order. And so
Yes.
I will say some places or organizations will accept it and some will not.
It's risky.
It is. And so I would say, because, and I didn't talk much about this, but at that point, I would say, tell the grandparent, file a complaint for child custody.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead and file. She has standing now because she has the child in her custody. And I'm saying her, but it can be grandparents, it can be grand as well. But because the grandparent has the child in his or her custody, she can go file for custody. And so even if there is that document, let's just say they did an informal document, I would use that as evidence to show the child has been with the grandparent for this amount of time. And so she needs an order to be able to make decisions when it comes to education, medical decisions, and the welfare of the child.
This is so good. This is just so good. And I'm hoping that we can get together and do some things, to help our grandmamas. I know when they see this, they just gonna be like, Miss Janita Bags, thank you. So as we come close, I usually do like 45 minutes or so. What are some suggestions that you would give to grandparents in either situation, formal or informal situation? What is, due to your experience, that either some do's and don'ts, or
Mhm.
either some suggestions to help with their situation in raising their grandchildren?
Absolutely. So one of the things I would say, because I talked a lot about the DSS side, so I'm going to use this as the more formal side, where they're filing for custody, let's just say, don't be afraid of going through the courts. A lot of people, they know somebody that didn't have a good experience and say, so they don't want to go through it. Don't be afraid to go through the courts, because if you have an order in hand, that's going to be better than that guardianship document, because this is signed by the judge. And
Yes.
so I have not seen where an order has not been able to be used when it comes to medical or educational purposes. And if for some reason you have any questions, reach out to an attorney, reach out to legal aid if you don't feel comfortable or feel like you can't, or don't have the money to talk to an attorney. I talk to people all the time without charging them any money.
Oh,
I do, because I want them to have the information that they need to make an informed decision. And so I have had those, some, of course, that come back and hire me based on the information I've provided to them. But most importantly, I want to be able to give people the information, the knowledge they need to make an informed decision. So to take the unknown out of the process. So once you feel a little more comfortable with it, you have more peace about the situation, you've got some direction, because a lot of times you just don't know. So you don't know what to do. And so I would say, don't be afraid to file for custody. A lot of times you can find the complaint for child custody on nccourts.gov. And
oh, okay.
um, you can type in a child custody packet. And you just want to make sure that it aligns with the county that you live in. Yes. So don't be afraid to go that route. That's probably going to be the better route. And a lot of times I have done what's called consent orders, and we call them friendly complaints, because the parties are aware that this action is being filed, just so we can have an order in hand and the grandparent can be able to do what they need to do.
Yes, yes.
If,
And that's
if
what we
I
want to do. Yeah. Empower
I'm
our
sorry,
grandparents.
if I can speak to one situation you mentioned, um, where one parent is deceased and the children are with the grandparent, and let's just say dad is making threats to come pick up the children, go ahead and file for custody. Don't be afraid to file for custody. And I am speaking from experience. So one of my clients in the past, their daughter passed away. And so they had custody of their three grandchildren. And so dad, who was not really a part of their lives, was trying to now come back in the picture, saying he was going to pick them up. And the parents came and saw me, and we ended up going to court.
Mm.
They got custody of their grandchildren. He ended up getting visitation, but they got custody. So don't be afraid to go to court, especially if you think it's in the best interest of your grandchildren.
Y'all hear that? Don't be afraid. Don't
Yeah,
y'all dare be afraid. If
don't
you
be.
need somebody, we're here.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the courts are there for.
Yes. Attorney Fitz, you have just been phenomenal. I am so full at this moment. Um, I do want to invite you back. As this is seen, we will be starting in 2025. Bags has been asked many, many times to start a support group for grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Well, a lot of times you all are the experts in many ways, but we want to do this in 2025 and invite people to come and speak to grandparents directly and answer questions. After this, if you do have some questions, please go to our website and put your questions in there at bagsgoodlife.org, or you can send an email to bagsgoodlife@gmail.com. Or if you want to make it personal, you can send it to me, Janita, Genita, Janita.Spencer at bagsgoodlife.org. And I will see if I can get that answer for you. I'm no lawyer, I'm no attorney, but I know one there, y'all. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I look forward to us continuing to have some conversations. And I know a lot of grandparents are going to feel so much better and maybe take that step and just move forward and do those things that you said do to make life just a little bit easier. Thank you again. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
All right, that's it for Bags of Goodies. I hope you got the goodies that you needed and enjoyed. Take care now. It was so nice being with you all. Good night. Good night. Good night.